Hello and welcome.
Hello.
It is so nice to be with you, Claire.
It's so nice to be with you, Liana.
It's been a minute.
It really has. And I don't listen, I'm gonna say it till the day I die, but I don't understand time anymore.
I know. It's slippery. I think, and I probably say this every time, but I
So,
feel like the pandemic changed it for
no, it
us.
did. I think I think we can officially say time has changed. Yes, thank you so much. Our counting of it, our understanding of it, our use of
Yes.
it, everything has
Yes.
changed.
All of it.
Yes, indeed. But nonetheless, yeah, it has been a hot minute since I can't even remember like what my life was the last time we had to
I think
catch
I was
up.
talking about that liver detox that was like
Oh,
killing me,
yes.
which has since ended, thank goodness.
You ended the liver detox, but you then started taking other stuff? Question
Yes, I
mark.
did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I'm really having like a health reboot moment.
You are.
Yes, because it turns out that if you ever had mono, which it's funny, in Europe, no one knows what mono is.
Wait,
People have not
what?
heard of it. They call it the kissing disease or something like that in Denmark.
Ah,
A lot
well,
of other people
that's yeah.
just don't know what mono is. And I'm like, mononucleosis?
They're like,
And
no, I don't care if you
no.
say more syllables. I don't know what it is.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So some people are kind of like, sure. I'm like, when you're little, all the kids get it, or you get it in college, you're really tired, and everyone's like, no, this might
I
be an
mean,
American
it
thing.
takes you out.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
have varying levels of it, severities. I remember my sister had it twice, and she was like, she had to have a tutor come in because she was out for like 2 months.
No, I was like, where is this going? She'd have a
Yeah, yeah,
tutor
yeah,
come in
yeah.
because he was the only one who could get rid of her mono.
Yes, indeed. But it was so funny because I remember when she was sick, my like uncle, crazy uncle, whatever, who would always make fun of us endlessly if we gave him a nugget. I remember my sister was sick and he's like, what does she have? And I was like, I don't know. And I like ran in to ask my mom and she was like, who's asking? And I was like, it's Uncle Buddy. And she was like, okay, don't tell him mono. Just tell him she's got the flu. Cause she was like, he's gonna make so much fun. Like it's the kissing, like
Yeah,
who
oh,
you've
that's,
been
yeah.
kissing, whatever.
Right,
And like
right,
my
right, right,
sister was
right.
too delicate for that ridicule at the time.
Well, I don't even remember having, I might have had it in eighth grade or something, but apparently once you have mono, you carry the Epstein-Barr virus for the rest of your life.
Apparently.
And my functional medicine doctor was concerned once he heard my entire health history because that Epstein-Barr has been correlated with a lot of autoimmune stuff, especially like mystery autoimmune, which was kind of mine. So he's treating me for the last 2 months for Epstein-Barr, which I think I definitely have because I'm having a struggle. It's a struggle.
Can we? I don't understand what Epstein Barr is.
It's a virus. It's actually a herpes virus.
Okay,
So like
so
you think about like like you get sick once, you get the virus once, and then just
sure,
lives
sure, sure.
dormant in your body for
Okay,
potentially the rest of your life.
so how it shows up is different, maybe in people. Like,
I think it could not affect you at all, it seems
sure,
like later
okay,
in life. And
okay,
well, I mean, you get sick. I think,
sure,
again, I'm not a doctor, guys, don't take this.
right, 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 right.
But my understanding is that it can cause problems. And basically, when my doctor heard my whole health history, he was pretty certain about this. And he essentially was like, listen, it's caused you problems in the past. And it's essentially like having a computer program running or like too many apps open, right? So if we get rid of it, you'll have more energy. Your body is like going to managing this thing.
Yeah,
And there are studies that show that it's related to certain cancers later in life.
great,
So
love
that's
that.
not a guarantee, right? That's just,
Certainly
it's
not.
related to that. So he basically was like, I would like to treat you for this. So, because basically I've made a full recovery except for my melasma is always really interesting to me because I have this hyperpigmentation in my face. And essentially your skin is a really big indicator of what's going on in your body.
Yeah,
So everything else for the most part reversed, but and actually I used to have it on my forehead. In the last couple of years, it completely went away. So I was like, oh, cool. Like, all of these life changes, moving, this, that, and the
yeah.
other thing. It's been many years since I was quite sick. Because basically, once I got divorced and my life changed a bunch, autoimmune gets really exacerbated by stress. So I had large amounts of just life stress that would be
Yeah.
normal that started to cause problems. So I was like, okay, things have settled down. And like last year was fairly stressful. So I'm like, okay, things have settled down and hopefully it will continue to go away. But I always ask, because of course I'm just so curious, right? Like I was able to reverse so much that there's a part of me that's like, okay, I created an environment for this to occur in my body, which I believe I can create an environment for it to heal. And it still hasn't. So he was saying it could be correlated to that. So basically I have 60 days of this like micro auto, like immune, blah, 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 whatever I had not heard of, that I have to take every day. And it just is sort of feels kind of like I'm fighting off the flu. And some days I feel fine and I go back to doing normal stuff and I feel really run down. So it's been this like up and down cycle. And of course, whenever you see someone a bit more functional, and I think it's really important, looking at the big picture, looking at getting a lot of tests done, understanding your gut health, all of that. But it's funny, like you go to regular Western doctors, they kind of are like, you're fine until you're sick, and then they throw pharmaceuticals.
Correct.
If you're not careful, on the other side of it, you go functional, and they're like, great, we're going to throw a million supplements.
I know. I was about to say, listen, both sides can be
right.
Take some
pills. Take some pills.
Yeah.
But the idea with the functional stuff that's really preventative, and there are certain really minor things that you can do that will, help optimize your health and prevent you from, ending up on pharmaceuticals. So of course I am the most sensitive person. And he's like, okay, let's give you this to support your gut and this to support your thyroid and this to support your hormones and this to kill Epstein-Barr. And at one point I was just taking like a handful of things and I was like, no. I'm not doing this. So I'm like, okay, one at a time. So I've like put a lot of things on hold and I'm just like focusing on the Epstein-Barr thing. But it was interesting because they're in these packets of 10. And I think there's like a different dosage because it basically is meant to sort of stimulate your immune system. It almost actually feels like getting a flu vaccine. Like that feeling when you get like
it's like a low level hanging out.
Yeah. Like that's sort of what I felt like. So, which obviously gets exacerbated if there's just like too much going on. So it's been, and I think I have to take these pill packs in order. They're actually very pretty. They're different color blue and they're numbered from 1 to 10. I know. And I have to like dump them out under my tongue, but I think there's like a different amount. It just tastes like sugar actually.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah. So it's not. So I take a sugar packet every morning, and it makes me feel bad. But essentially, so crazy. I think throughout the course of the 10 days, there's a different amount. Yeah. So it's been really hard with like everything else to kind of like modulate what's happening. And so a couple of weeks ago, I wrote to the doctor and was like, "Hey, I'm still like feeling pretty fatigued," and then. He didn't get back to me right away. And when he did, I was sort of feeling better. And I was like, oh, I'm okay. And he's like, you should add this other herb, this like cocktail of herbs, actually very similar to like the liver detox stuff I was taking, but that would help with lymphatic drainage. He's like, this will support your lymph and get you getting. So of course, I need to know, but he's like, take 30 drops of this in like a liter of water. I do that and I can't sleep and I feel crazy. And I was like, okay. So if he says 30, I take like 5. My body can handle like 5. So I
think I need to ask the question, is he selling all the supplements or is he telling you what to go get?
He tells me what to go get. He has no connection to any of these and is like
not profiting from this.
No, there's no profiting. And at one, he was like, at one of them, he was like, you can get it cheapest in the US. And if you have someone coming, can they bring me some too? Like,
perfect.
Yeah, I'm getting like supplement mules.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. No, he is not. This is not through him at all. And none of it is that expensive even. Right. Some of it like very degree, but like not, it's, 9 to 20 to 30 euros or something, like nothing's overly crazy.
I think that's always the question that we should all ask, when
like who's benefiting from this?
Who's benefiting from this? Exactly. And so I just wanted to, you have said this to me before, but I just wanted to ease the listeners' concerns.
Yes.
Of that.
No, I love that. That's a really, really important question.
Yes.
But yeah, every 2 days it's like, okay, now I feel weird again. But it's just highlighted how sensitive I am to like everything.
Which, did we need highlighting?
No, we knew. We knew. And then the liver detox made me even more sensitive to everything.
I know. Well, what number? You said 60 days with this part?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And where are we in that number?
24 days left. Okay. And like I just realized that like I think that part of it in the beginning was I just assumed that I wasn't sort of low-key having the flu all the time. So I just would like
continue as
a normal person.
day.
Right. Yeah. I'd exercise, I'd make plans, I'd do these things. And then every few days I'd be like, and I was like, okay, this is something. And he kind of was like, well, if you react to it, then that's showing us that like you were suffering from this.
Yeah.
So I hope that I feel really good afterwards. And if not, once again, I've been doing this for years. It's a very interesting science experiment on my own body.
Always doing a science experiment.
But I have friends who have used him and have sworn by like stuff with hormones, and he helps a lot of women get pregnant who are older, and just like a lot of really beneficial things. So I like to experiment.
No, so, I know, and you obviously know very well what's happening in your body and what feels right.
Yeah. But well, the other really cool thing, I think I probably talked about this last time. He showed me how to like muscle test all of my supplements to see whether or not.
I don't think he basically did talk about that.
Yeah. So basically you can feel your pulse. It's so gentle. I haven't like totally nailed it, but it's interesting. So you feel your pulse in your wrist.
Okay.
And you feel how it normally is, right? And apparently like it could be a food or whatever. You either hold it in your hand or you put your arm near whatever the thing is. And if it gets stronger or faster, it means you need it. And if it gets weaker or slower, you don't need it.
Well, now isn't that fascinating? Here's my
So he basically,
question.
His whole thing was like, we're going to do all of these things to optimize your body, but I want you every day checking in with your body, whether or not you need it. So we were in his office and it was working. It was really interesting.
Okay. What if you don't feel your pulse in your wrist?
Then you're dead. Claire is dead. Claire's a dead woman.
Thank you. I've always had a hard time getting.
Some people have a hard time. That's normal. I think for some people it's harder to feel than others.
Yeah.
It's also like my veins. I have like the craziest veins. Like I literally am so lucky. I'm like that. I'm such a dad where like every time I give blood, I'm like, good thing I didn't get into heroin, because they're like, you have good veins.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I was like, where are you going with the fact that you're such a dad with veins? I'm like, what? But that makes sense. You can't resist a good dad joke.
I can't. It's getting really bad as I age.
Well, that's what happens to us.
But it's interesting because this whole thing, it's been very cool because I had, the lab test done. So I know everything we're doing is in support of, like, I see like all of my levels and I'm excited. I'm into being proactive about my health. Yeah. But at the same time, there's this world where he's like, yes, there are these things that you need that will optimize your body. Take them. And I do it. And I'm like, nope. I'm like, okay. One at a time, and I will be really discerning about this. So it's really cool. This is another level of me trusting, like learning to listen and trust my body, which I think is an ever evolving thing that we all need to be doing. And like with that, it's been really interesting. You and I have been having these conversations, and it's so funny because I remember when I outed myself to you about this a year or two ago. But I always wanted to have a podcast. I always loved listening to it. Well, even when I was little, there are like videos of me before dancers said I liked to interview. I wanted to have an interview show.
Of course.
When I was like 5.
Yes.
That's what I was interested in. And I studied journalism for a while in college and didn't end up going down that road. But like, this was something I was always really excited about.
Well, it's a curiosity. I think we both have a curiosity, and that helps with this lovely, having a podcast gives us that opportunity to learn and to ask questions.
Yeah. But it was interesting because so much of what I love to do is have like deep, meaty conversations. And then when I look at especially my human design, the way I get clear or figure things out is about speaking and having conversations with the right people. So it was so interesting. Like I always really wanted to and having a podcast is such a beautiful way to get an audience with people who maybe wouldn't normally just call you on the phone.
Absolutely.
So this past year, we're a little over a year with doing this. And as I've been reflecting on it, it's been this really incredible vehicle of actually building my own self-worth.
Yeah.
Because I think I know I pedestalized a lot of people that I've interviewed, right? And,
Yes.
they're more of an expert. They have more of a following. They've done these things. They have these degrees and I don't. And over and over again, I get to have these really authentic, grounded conversations with people who are just people who have different journeys. And
100%.
And that has been really incredible for me because I think that because I didn't have a traditional route, that I can tend to feel like less than. And this is again my 2-4 profile. I'm a 2, which is they talk about it being like you're supposed to do things you're innately good at and not be able to explain it. But the dark side of that is you never feel good enough because it's like you don't have like 1,000 degrees. So there is a part of me that always feels like, can someone make me a little bit more official? Can someone crown me expert or something?
Right.
And not that I need that, but it's like to some degree I am in a lot of things and I don't want to speak up because, oh my gosh, maybe you have more degrees than I do. So my knowledge is not.
Which doesn't mean anything. But
it really doesn't. It really, I know.
We're told that means.
Right. Everything.
Yes, that means everything.
And so I think there was a part of me that, I'm just fascinated by people and I love being able to ask questions. But I think there's this other side of this podcast and the desire for it was to really start to explore and talk about what I've learned and my ideas around what I want to put out into the world.
Yeah.
And that feels really scary to me because it's not one thing. I can't be like, hey, I'm a regular nutritionist or, hey, I'm a, pediatrician and this is what I believe. I've had this really interesting opportunity to learn and grow in all these different ways and put things together that have been, especially the training in acting, right? And that embodiment work, pairing that with nutrition and everything that I've been studying around mindfulness and neuroscience. That's unique to me. I mean, there are other people, but that's unique to me. But because I'm not a neuroscientist and a bodywork expert and a PhD in nutrition, that I shouldn't talk about it, right? And it's really interesting to look at my shadow around all of this or my. So it's been funny because I was talking to Claire and lately I've been not wanting to, that's Claire. Yep. I've been talking, I'm like, I don't really want to interview people anymore.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what does that mean? And then I was like, well, maybe I don't really want to have the podcast anymore. So tried that on. And then I was like, no. I just want to have conversations about what I'm interested in with people who get it or are on the same journey as I am. Yeah. So that feels really scary, but also it's my party. I can cry if I want to. Yeah. It's my podcast. I can talk about whoever and whatever I want. But it was really interesting because I was like, oh, I think I need to, because then of course you're like, I have millions and millions of people listening to this who count on it.
Listen, I don't want you to downgrade. It doesn't matter because it's the same thing. It's like if you affect one person, that's the most important. It doesn't matter numbers. It doesn't matter. Right. It's like you're providing something.
Yeah.
For people who are listening. And that's a beautiful thing. We're not in this for.
No.
And that's the thing I was talking to someone the other day who was interested in starting a podcast. And I was like, the thing that you have to be clear with when you start is, why am I doing this? Yeah. What is my goal?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if your goal is to have numbers and sponsorships and all of that, okay, then you're approaching this differently. Yes. But if you're doing this for your own curiosity and love of it, and then also know that there may be people who could benefit and enjoy it, then it doesn't fucking matter what the numbers are.
Yeah, no, true. No, and that's 100% right.
And I
And
don't want to, if we concern ourselves with how few or how large the numbers are, then we're taking away the specialness of the people who do.
yeah, that I love that. I love that's such a brilliant point. I started getting in my head about like, well, people expect it to be this one way and I don't want to let them down. And then I started thinking about like, well, what about all the people who have also been on the podcast? They expect it to be a certain kind of podcast. And if I start talking about ideas that maybe they don't believe in or they don't agree with, then maybe they're going to regret being on my podcast, or like it's going to take my credibility away. Like I just watched myself go down this funny rabbit hole and then want to not do it. And then I was like, oh, well, now I'm afraid of what I actually want to do is like really be, because I'm in this, you and I, since we started, have both changed dramatically.
Dramatically.
I am a completely different person than when I was in January. I am a completely different person than we started this when I was in Maine waiting for my visa.
Girl, you are still tied up in that old relationship dynamic.
I mean, there were so many things going on that
wow,
were
what a world we were
like
in.
Like
In our
so
own
different
world. Yeah.
Yeah, so different, so different. There was so much going on. And there have been so many iterations of like I've grown so much in this process. And at the end of the day, like it's funny, and I hate to say this because yes, this is my trainings in health coaching. I'm so bored. Like I loved interviewing Federica. I loved reading her book, but I've read a million. I'm so bored. I don't want to talk about just diet and exercise and sleep. And I don't want to like what I'm being called to build and explore is combining everything and looking at like consciousness and connection to self. So it's funny, the further along this has gone, it's almost like I'm getting further away from my own authenticity sometimes.
Yeah.
And that feels like I'm always hiding. And I think while you're growing and while things are changing, it's hard for me to talk about it anyway, because it's like, what am I even doing?
Sure.
Now I'm getting so much more clear about like what I want to build and what like the next iteration of like my offerings are, and like even like trying to figure out what to even call myself at this point.
Well, that's always been a struggle. Yeah.
I know.
I mean, truly, because nothing really makes sense. But I have to say, like, sorry to interrupt, but I feel like observing you on this journey and talking to you, I feel like the importance of what the podcast has been so far has been to reaffirm or reassure your knowledge and your place in this industry and world. Right? Because like you said before, starting the podcast, you were like nervous about who you were going to talk to and like who would actually do this and the conversations and whatever, because there were, people with big credits.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then I have watched you kind of evolve to, of course, yes, we're going to have this conversation. Yeah. You might have learned that. And then now you have a piece of paper. I've learned that and I'm in practice with it. It's like, so it's been fascinating to watch your journey in the last year plus. And the importance of it. And it does feel, knowing how much we've both changed in the last, over a year, it feels right to be flowing into like maybe a different direction or feeling, or just like moving into something that's more authentic to you versus trying to get information or like interviewing to learn from someone else. Right. You have you have the majority of this information. Yeah. And what I'm most interested in is like, how do I put this out in the world and how do I support people? And it was so funny because I was feeling like, wow, I think I need to, and again, selfishly, this is for me. I'm like saying this to the world for me, but I was like, whoa, I think I need to go and like pivot this. And so we're not really going to do as many interviews. I want to have more conversations with Claire. I want to have more conversations and maybe build out a rotating cast of characters. That's her. Yep. Yeah. That is Claire. It's like going between talking to me and to the audience
about me, Claire, that crazy bitch. That's on my
crazy.
But I want to also just chat with kind of like-minded people who are helping me evolve these ideas and concepts, because it's grown, right? What I've done and the breadth of my work has evolved. And it was, around body and, I had my own eating issues and illness. And that's where it all started. But like
And
the longer I've
healing
been here,
journey.
your favorite word, my healing journey
Your healing
has
journey.
really evolved to looking at connection and empowerment, because disconnection and a lack of, I guess, feeling powerful within your body, within your choices, within your decisions, that's where people get sick. So it's like, I was taught when I was at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, their whole thing was get to the root cause. And I think I just took it too literally, where it's like, oh, I'm going to keep digging until we get to the like root cause of like humanity's problems.
Right.
And then I'm going to try to build something to solve that.
All right. We can't.
Hey, let me dream big, Claire. We're going to change the world.
I think you can dream big, and I think you can change the world, but I feel like that is like waiting until you figure that out before you take action or whatever.
That is
like
crazy.
That's intense.
Yes. But I actually had this really cute moment today and recently this past week, as I'm like, I told Claire, I'm like, I think it's really important for me to share this. And like, this needs to pivot. And also, I've been getting nudges externally. And today I had lunch kind of out of nowhere. It's my dad's cousin's wife, who she's been an expander. She's nearly 80. She's fabulous, great shape, traveling all over the world. She's here speaking at a conference. Wow. She at one point was the head of the Kellogg Foundation, Kellogg the cereal. At another point in time, she was the president of Stanford University.
Sure.
So, she's just really incredibly smart, like incredible resume. Like started foundations out of Africa. So she's working in Africa all the time while raising kids and having a relationship. Just like one of those women where you look at them and you're like, it's intimidating, right? And I've had very few moments in time where she and I have just sat one-on-one. This actually might have been like the first time we had lunch together. Like I've sat with her at family reunions and conversations, but we've never spent time together, just the two of us. Mm-hmm. And we had lunch today, and it was just like, again, it makes me want to cry, like having a woman-to-woman conversation about fears and problems and successes. And, at the very end of it, she gave me a really amazing compliment. Well, actually, I've had this twice in the last week, because most of you don't know her. My paternal grandmother had a big hand in raising me, and she is sort of like a spirit animal. Yeah. And she's no longer with us, but like I wear like some of her ring, like she's a part of me and was a big part of like just one of those women that lit up a room and like just was an example of what it was like. She made you feel amazing. So sometimes when I do these different meditation exercises where I have to like evoke a really beautiful emotion, it's how she would greet me at the door. And she'd be like, hello. And it was just like big arms and just outpouring of love. And it's so interesting because I always felt that way because she was my grandmother. And like, but everyone had this, my ex-husband, like so many of my friends.
She was just a beam of light.
Yeah, and just really loved people and brought a lot of love to the world. And twice in the last week, I reconnected with one of my cousins who's also really smart and interesting, who's written a book. And both of them gave me these two amazing compliments. One, the highest one was, you remind us so much of your grandmother.
Oh my gosh.
And I they're like, your energy is just how you are in the world. And I was like, you don't understand. That is like the highest compliment that I could receive. Yeah. And the fact that like, I may not feel like I've accomplished very much. And sometimes I have these moments where I don't feel like I have a lot to be proud of because I haven't done the traditional thing. It's like, if you can tell me, like I've lived my life in her footsteps, like that feels like incredible to me. And on the other side of it, both, today, and actually my cousin who'd written this amazing book, who is a bit older and also quite accomplished and interesting, she was like, I wrote this book and you talk about a lot of the themes. We take a different approach, but I think we have a lot in common, which I was very complimented by. And then today, we ended our lunch and she turned to me and she was like, you should really be proud of yourself. Everything that you know and that you talk about, is what's being talked about at all these conferences that I go to all over the world. Like
Exactly.
what you are looking at in terms of like women and empowerment and health and consciousness, like this is what people are discussing. And like she was a little bit like, I think she was impressed, and because I haven't seen her probably in 5 years. She was a little bit like, you should
Oh,
feel really proud of yourself, and you're like your
yeah.
grandmother. And I was like, wait, you're telling me this? And I'm like,
Oh,
and it was
that feels so
honestly
good.
the nicest thing to get before like coming here and being like, hey, world, I'm going to stop leaning on other experts and I'm going to lean into my own, I'm going to take ownership of what I do now.
Of
And I'm
being an
not
expert.
saying, yes, I mean, you can call me that. I don't even know
You
if
are
I
an
want to call myself
expert.
that. But I want to more authentically and bravely bring what I know to be true into this world. And that's what I want to pivot. And it's scary because it is a combination of science and mindfulness and neuroscience and spirituality and just, intuitive wisdom. And, at the end, we were really chatting, and I was just talking about the thing I talk about all the time, and it's not just women, but women suffer from it the most. I was like, and we were talking about different people in our lives and family members who are struggling for, this reason, disconnection from self.
Yeah.
Right. And what I want to build, and the thing that I'm most excited about, is how do I get people reconnected to that intuitive knowing, that wisdom, your gifts. And like, let's out the fact that like we do have feelings and knowings, and it's been really cool because I've reconnected with my creativity. And this is how I even got connected to any sort of spiritual. I was not a religious person. I got connected to any sort of spirituality through healing my body and being forced to listen to it, much like I am now with the supplements. And on the other side of it, knowing that like when you're on set, like doing improv, are you kidding? Where is this coming from? Right. Like practicing being in the moment and being a vessel. When you write, when you're in the moment with another person and you're not in your head, where does this information or creativity or inspiration come from? It's not ours necessarily. It feels like I often felt like just a vessel for it. And you read a lot of writers talk about that.
Yeah.
And so much of what I'm curious about is, how do I give people the tools and resources to optimize their vessel so they can be the biggest channel for what they need to know and need to do, whether that's internal or external wisdom, and how do we bring it out to the world? So that's what I'm interested in, guys. So we'll talk about nutrition. It's going to be maybe less. I know we talk about this stuff a little bit, but like that's what I'm so fascinated, and that's what I'm really being called to explore and do.
Yeah.
So season 2 of this is
Yeah.
going to only be a little bit different and going to be a little bit more out there, maybe, for lack of a better word. And if I lose you, I'm sorry, but this is like, I can only be my authentic self. And it was so interesting the past couple of months of doing this. I found myself bored of the topics and really desiring something more authentic, even though it felt scary to me, because I think everything that in my brain, and society kind of puts this in our brains, that isn't coming from science or an expert or a study from Harvard University, is crazy. And it's like, that's just not, I mean,
you've always, well, you have, I shouldn't say always, but you struggled for a while with, if it didn't come from Western, like if it wasn't reaffirmed through Western medicine or textbooks or whatever, that it was kooky crazy.
Yeah, a little bit.
But
and the crazy thing is, like, in my 20s, Western medicine failed me.
No, of course. But I think that comes down to your insecurity of credits, right? Of like,
absolutely self-worth. It's self-worth.
And not to say that you weren't using these things in practice or believing in their credit, but you've been kind of delicately, anytime you talk about it, you're like, oh yeah, it's just a little cuckoo, or as they say, woo or whatever. But it's like, but no, I mean, it's just, I think the other thing I feel coming out of the pandemic, besides our loss of understanding time, is our openness to find peace and healthiness and understanding in any way we possibly can. And also giving more credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
Or
Well, I mean, you even sent me that meme the other day
yeah,
about like, um,
is it woo
here,
woo or
is it woo woo or did we steal it from like
indigenous
indigenous
people?
people?
Yeah. And yes, that's
It's like,
correct.
yes, a lot of the stuff, yes.
Happened way before Western medicine.
Yeah. So just trying to step into my leadership a little bit more
Good.
and getting excited about, sharing what I want to build and what I truly believe. Because again, at the end of the day, like it's so boring to talk to people about sleep and calories and food. And it is so funny because even like with Federica, she's everything is based on like the most wide-ranging studies, right? Because she's like a
Absolutely.
public health person. And it was so funny. I started eating more like her book after reading it, just kind of
Yeah.
subconsciously. I'm feeling shitty because like
Yeah.
I can't eat that many beans and I actually feel better when I eat more red meat. And it was one
Right.
of those funny things where it's like the latest science that works for everyone is maybe not necessarily going to work for you.
And
So,
also,
and
it doesn't work for everyone.
it doesn't. It
Nothing works
doesn't.
for
It
everyone,
doesn't. It doesn't.
except for
But it's
sleep.
like,
Sleep
yeah.
works for everyone.
Sleep. Claire just realized that going to bed before 1 a.m. was
Did you
maybe going to
guys
be.
know
Sure.
that I can't. But no, like food wise,
Yeah.
our bodies are so, I mean, obviously, generally, what I did love from her, and just as a quick side note, when she was talking about the quote unquote Mediterranean diet, it
Yeah.
has less to do with like what comes from the Mediterranean and more of just like local fresh foods,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
that kind of
And
stuff. But
like
what that
balance of grains,
is
balance
different.
of, yeah.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But it was
Depending on,
interesting because reading that book, she was sort of really encouraging people to like limit meat and increase beans.
sure.
So, and I was playing around with that and I was like, and I feel terrible.
Yeah. It's not for you.
So it's not for me, it's not for my body. But I'm like, how many times do I have to learn this lesson? Because I played that game like for the first like part of my 20s. I was like, I'm gonna read this book and try it. I'm gonna read that
Yeah.
book and try it. Oh my God, South Beach diet. I'm like, I'm gonna eat cheese and cold cuts
South
all the time.
Beach diet.
And then
Remember
become
that?
constipated.
Yeah, no, not good.
No. But it's been interesting because I feel like, especially in the past couple of months, we've both like had a bigger pivot
Mhm.
recently. And it's been interesting because, I mean, being on this side of Claire's journey, observing it, supporting
Yes.
it is
Getting
been
frustrated by it.
it's of course, and yes, that's true. But mostly not, but only
No, it makes sense.
only recently because which was good and I think it was necessary because
Absolutely.
we had to have a woman to woman chat
Yes, we did.
because um and it's so crazy because I see this so much and what I'm learning more and more with what I'm exploring and reading about and what I see is like guys it's all us. You're the
Yeah,
one. You're
yeah,
the one. Like, yes, of course, there are socioeconomic and cultural, there are things that are
absolutely.
wrong, right? Things
Factors.
are not
Yeah, yep.
equal. But so much of what I deal with is people's own inability to help to get out of their own way. And it was so interesting. Do you want to talk about like Claire had a really interesting comment? Your year has been really,
Boy,
really kind
oh
of
boy, it's
interesting.
been growth. I feel like every time we would do a catch up, we have done a catch up. It's like, oh, what a few weeks, like just growth for both of us, I think. But
Yeah.
um,
This year,
yeah,
I feel like it's sped up the most for you.
absolutely. Oh, for sure, for sure. I'm certainly, yeah.
No, I
I'm
mean,
catching up. I'm catching up.
I mean, because last year was, oh God.
Last year was fucking rough.
I know. I know.
One of the most emotionally taxing, exhausting, but growing periods.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but yeah, it's been, yeah, and I think a part of that emotional and growth and all the struggles that I had last year is just obviously making me more into my, more in tune with my body and
Mhm.
more. And I've always had like, you know, a lot of us have this, but we quiet it down with like, is it gut instinct or do we know something that's kind of beyond us,
Yeah.
And so I've always kind of had this weird like things happen before, like I know something's going to happen before it happens, and like, yeah, I'm not always right, but anywho, I've really been leaning more into.
I bet,
Yes.
wait. Can I challenge that? I bet that's not true.
What do you mean? What's not true?
When you have a feeling about something, I bet, and it's like more like a subtle feeling about something, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course, you're like, I like when it's conscious,
Sure.
but like your sort of unconscious, subtle feelings about things, I bet they've been right the whole time.
No, I think they have. Whether I act on them,
Yes, that's different.
that's a different.
But I bet they're right.
No, you're correct. You're correct. They're right, but what I do with that information may not be the correct course.
Well, that's
the
like
right
the
course.
problem with that's like literally everyone's problem. And like,
Right.
oh, I'm not listening to myself, whatever that capacity is coming
Whatever
in.
it is. Whatever it
Yeah.
is. So yeah, that because 9 times out of 10, I'll be like, I fucking knew this. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have, and that's so many of us.
And
But,
why do you think it's been so hard for you to, in the past couple of years, like listen and try, like the disconnection has gotten so big for you?
That's a great question. I think there's an insecurity, my own insecurity of why would I know? Right. So
Yeah.
just as a parallel to what we were just talking about with you, it's like, you before would had a bit of insecurity in the fact that you didn't have all of the degrees and the masters and the PhDs and the whatever.
Yeah.
Like my insecurity is, well, I have no tangible proof.
Yeah.
And so if no one else sees it, like I may get it, but like, maybe it's just in my head, or does everyone feel this way? Right.
No, I couldn't, I know what you're talking about so much.
Yeah.
Because with what's been like creatively coming through, it's been happening to me since my 20s when I've given it space.
Yeah.
But it's too weird.
Yes. Right.
So I'm like, oh, that's just like my thing. Like I'm doing that, right? It's a me thing, or that's not really what I think it is, or like whatever.
Or it's not unique. For me, I'm like,
it's
not unique. Other people feel this way or whatever. And like,
I think to varying degrees, it's probably not, right? Like everyone
100%.
has a bit of, these like intuitions and sensitivities and things, but some people more than others, for sure. For sure. And then it was so interesting because you had this, Claire has been fighting, actually honoring her body. And like, you're so smart. You're like literally not doing anything I ever told you ever.
And I know every step of the way.
She knows everything. And
like, if anyone is a devout student of yours, it's me.
So funny. At one point, very early on, my mom listened to the podcast and you were talking about like not feeling well or what you were eating or whatever. And she's like, why doesn't Claire ever do the detox? Does she know about it? I was like, she does. She does.
Oh, she does. She's done it numerous times. And when she does it, she loves it. She feels amazing. But yet, she still just,
But I think
old habits, old security blankets.
We love to hold on to our blocks sometimes so intensely that it took like you being so busy with this film, right? And like pushing yourself to your physical limits. And then the wheels started falling off and just like your capacity to show up in the world.
Yeah.
And then you guys, it made me so upset.
Yep.
Claire is a little avoidant.
Yep. A little.
And I know this about her, but she's never done it to me before.
Yeah.
And you also are like big-hearted and you're a very responsible and like conscientious person. So if she doesn't live up to her like commitments, she feels really bad.
Boy, oh boy, if I feel like I'm failing you.
Yeah. And I've watched her do this in other situations, but I was like, she's never going to do it to me, because of course not. Like,
such confidence.
And Claire went radio silent.
Yep.
For like days.
Yeah.
And then I'm of course like on your team of people who care about your well-being.
Of course.
And I'm like, girl, you can't, like, you're scary. Like, are you
Yeah.
dead? Like, you
Yeah.
can't do this. And it was interesting because it was the first time where we had this conversation where I'm like, cut the shit.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so sick and tired of watching you be horrible to yourself.
Yeah.
And then it got weird. You guys want to hear about it? This is going to out both of us for being total
Listen, I
witches.
love it.
It got weird. Like and I guess I'll back this up. I've had a couple of really crazy things happen. When you meditate all the time, things get a little bit interesting. And I've spent the past few years meditating for a few hours, and it changes your perception of reality and your understanding of consciousness.
Yeah.
So things change. I had this, and I'll go into it some other time, but I got so expanded last year through a few different things that I realized that, like, yeah, it was actually the most heartbreaking thing, that a lot of my personality was built, and I think everyone's is, honestly, but built on trauma.
Yeah.
And I have been, like, historically a people pleaser, and really, really like overgiving. And I started to realize that. And I started to not be able to do it anymore. But I felt like part of my identity, and it was almost like I lost this part of my personality and my identity. And in letting that go, it was like anytime, it's almost like when you realize you're eating sugar to feel better. It was the same thing, right?
I don't understand that.
She's like, I've never done that once in my life. I don't even know about Cadbury tiny Easter eggs.
How weak of a person. I get
but in this journey of, like, really coming to terms with, like, the last weird coping mechanisms, you're sort of faced with just having to sit with your feelings, and you get let go of things. And I started to become more sensitive to things. And I've always been intuitive and creative. And all of a sudden I'm getting a lot more clear in terms of the directives about what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm feeling other people's feelings more, which is something I have done. And then they would talk about this even in my, like, kind of hippy dippy nutrition school. He goes, I remember him saying this. He's like, you'll be sitting across from someone in a session, and they'll say something, and all of a sudden you'll know exactly what they need, and you'll start telling them. And I was like in my 20s, and I remember having, like, a couple of clients, like 50-year-old men in, like, executive, and it would happen. And you're like, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
But they called that out in my coaching school. It's like, you'll know the answer to something, you'll have no idea where it came from.
Yeah.
And
don't question it.
Don't question it. Like, you'll know exactly what people need, and you won't know why. Like, be a space, ask them questions. So after kind of having this, like, shedding of, like, these coping mechanisms and parts of my personality, I really was showing up more honestly in all of these areas. And the noise that was keeping some, like, trauma that I had to deal with last year and, like, really heal from, that was running again, much like the Epstein bar back in like a loud thing in the back of my brain, was silent. All of a sudden my sensitivities got elevated to everything. So I'm thinking and feeling and knowing things, and it's getting louder and louder, and I'm starting to feel like a crazy person. But then I'm starting to communicate that with people in my life, and they're like, that's right. And I'm like, okay. And then it culminated, and this is so interesting that I don't think that stuff with the mind and body is separate, because I started feeling physically a little bit weird after everything, and started doing all these tests, and I felt like my liver was crazy. And so I started doing this liver detox, and wow, did that change my brain. And all of a sudden, every morning I'm getting all this information, and I've had a sense of clarity and purpose, and all kinds of stuff is coming through. And then it was interesting because I feel like I got the most clear I've ever been at a time where you were kind of, like, not at your lowest, but you had dipped, right? You've been like, in the last year or so, I feel like, making these incredible changes in your life. And like, it's been so wonderful to see, because you were struggling so much, like so many people during the pandemic, but so much had resurfaced for you that you were stuck for such a long time. And, like, your momentum started to wane, and it was so hard for me to watch. It was heartbreaking because I love you. I'm so invested in this journey. And, like, you've been such now a part of my company and part of my journey, that it's like, I will, and this is the worst thing about, especially, like, dating me. God, if you don't want to change, like, I will literally be there being like, you can be better. You can be better. This is what you're doing wrong. It's like the worst. But
It's
Literally,
not the
I'm your,
worst, it's the best, but sure, go ahead.
well, if you're not ready for it, like
Well,
living with like a cheerleader life coach being like, well, you say you one thing and you're doing another. Like people are like, oh my God. And
yeah.
even at one point, I remember my mom was saying to me, and this was years ago when I was feeling very frustrated in my career, but I really, really helped support my ex-husband. She'd watched
Okay.
some movie and it was kind of like the husband taking credit for all the wife's work or
Of
whatever.
course.
And
Yeah.
like someone was asking at a fancy dinner party what the woman did. And she looks across the table at her husband. She's like, I'm a kingmaker. And my mom was like, that's what you are.
I remember, wait, I do, yes. What is
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
movie? Do you
yeah.
remember?
Ah,
I can't remember. It doesn't
it
matter.
might have been
But
about
that's
art or something. Yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But like truly, like I will be in your life and be like, I can see the best and
Yeah.
I won't stop. And some people don't like that, which again, like, and I'm better at, like, I'm not
Not
unsolicited
taking that
advice, but
on.
like if
Yeah.
you're that close to me, I can't stand for it.
Yeah.
It's too frustrating. So we had this weird moment of here I am hearing Claire, same song and dance over and over again. And it's like, I'm ready to be like, maybe you need to work with someone else, or maybe we need to, like, I don't know if I can help you anymore. Like, you're just like, what's going on here? And then we're having this conversation, and like, out of nowhere, I literally am like, I know what's going on. And then I start like channeling. Like, what was
Mhm.
your experience of that?
Well, I think going back to what I was saying a second ago about being seen or like having someone call out what I've known,
Yes.
like that was profound because yes, my daily bullshit, right? And you know how it's like I continually avoid I continually avoid doing things for myself, right? To live in this like trauma, whatever. But I think there was a moment where you just kind of like went quiet, and then I can't remember because my memory is shit, but um you said something that just like triggered a a
I remember it. It came through like a bolt of
yeah,
lightning into my brain. And I was like, oh my God, you are so sensitive and
yeah,
so gifted and so powerful and so afraid of this. Like you have a
yes,
lot of really kind of, again, countercultural, if we want to call
yeah,
it that,
yeah.
right? Um, Gifts. And I think a lot of artists are that way. I'm like,
Mhm.
you're really intuitive, you know things. I think you're afraid of it. And like
Yeah.
you don't, and sleep is the biggest thing that Claire will
Oh,
sabotage herself
yes.
with. And think about it. And this is why, and I'm so excited about the platform that I'm building, is because at the core, we don't mean to, right? We make all these decisions where we don't sleep, we eat crap, we drink crap. So we can drown out the noise inside
Yes.
because often there's pain associated with that. And of
Yes.
course, for you, there definitely was, like, you've had a very
Absolutely.
tragic family history. So here you are with all of that as a highly sensitive person. You didn't want to deal with it. And I was like, Claire, oh gosh,
Yeah.
like you have so many gifts that you're just drowning out by not
Mhm.
sleeping and eating poorly. And I just started spewing all this at her. And you guys, she starts like dry heaving.
I did.
I get goosebumps all over my body, which is now I know a signal that like truth is happening.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. It happened a couple of times where like someone will say something and my body will light up.
Yeah.
And I have goosebumps all over my body. And Claire goes in and out of, I mean, I wouldn't call it hysterical, but you were sobbing.
No, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like observing my body, but also very much in my body. Like
I
it
thought she was going to
was,
throw up onto the
I thought I
Zoom.
was going to throw up for sure. It was so strange because it was like I couldn't get a deep breath, but then it was like there was a gurgling happening in my gut, which that's only happened. It's different than like when you're hungry and you have a gurgle,
Mhm.
like it was this weird gurgling. And the other time is like in therapy with Ching, with the
Yeah.
trauma healer, like really letting stuff out and like really getting in touch with my body. And it was just like this gurgling and the tingles in my body. I felt like I needed to just get everything out. And part of that felt like I needed to vomit. Thankfully, I didn't on my computer. I didn't at all, but not. But yeah, it was like I went to a different level.
Say
Like,
more.
yeah, like it was like I've been sitting in the shadow, on like a lot of home stairs
Yeah.
with, if they're wooden and they have like a little lip
Uh-huh.
that goes over. I feel like I was just underneath that little lip. Like,
Mm.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready. It's so bright up there. It's so
Yeah.
bright on that next step. And
Yeah.
then I felt like I grew and I moved to the next step. Like,
And why do you think that happened with me calling that out?
a validation,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
confirmation of what I
Yeah.
have felt and what I have, um, you identified my fears, like a true
Mm.
fear that I've clearly been struggling with without me having to set that up.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it was like it was kind of out of nowhere.
It
Right. Like,
was. It was out of
it was
nowhere. I was
fully
like,
out
all
of
of a sudden,
nowhere.
it was like a lightning bolt of like, oh, whoa, I have the answer to this problem finally.
Yeah. And so it really, yeah, it just was like a slap in the face in the very best way of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, this is, I see you. I know that this is what you are and who you are and what you can be.
Yeah.
And there was, while your support and your kind words and your love over the years has been unbelievable and helped
Yeah.
me be here today, it was
Mm.
a different level, right? It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like a different, because again, it wasn't in response to me saying anything or like
Right.
working through. Yes, it helped with struggles, whatever, but that wasn't necessarily what we were talking about. It
Yeah.
was more of
Yeah.
the surface level stuff that of my sabotaging. But yeah, it felt great. Like my body had a full visceral reaction
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
that. It was
Yeah.
scary and fascinating and amazing.
Yeah. That like when Tara, so I had this shaman that came into my life out of nowhere right before I moved here,
Yeah,
which I don't know, I've talked very much about that.
a little bit.
But she offered me these sessions. She basically was like, "Oh my God, you're why I'm at this dinner party. I feel called to like give you these sessions for free before you leave." And of course, you know me, I'm like, "This is weird. Yes, definitely. Let's
Yes,
do it."
please. Yes.
And the first session, she said all this really crazy stuff. And I had this, it wasn't, I didn't start, but I remember in my brain observing and being like, she's totally full of shit. This is crazy. And my tears just streaming, like bursting out of my eyes,
Yeah.
being like, my body recognizes the truth in this thing. And my
Yeah.
ego mind
It's
is like,
trying to
this
shut it down.
is like the, I don't believe this for 1 second, that I could never
Right.
be any of these good things that she's saying. And my body is like, oh, thank you.
Thank you for seeing. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that how it felt?
Very much so. I don't think I was shutting it down as much
No,
because
no, I think you
yeah,
weren't. I think you
but
weren't.
it
I think you were
was
like
like,
relieved.
it was, yeah, my body was doing things that I couldn't replicate if I tried to now. You know what I mean?
Nor would
Like,
you want to, probably.
nor
Nor
would
would you
want
want
to.
to.
But I mean, it feels like it's fascinating because I did just have that moment when we started talking about this. I had a small little gurgle, and then it does feel like a belching of sorts. It's like getting gas out of my system, but not as it's different. It's different than if
Yeah.
I'm drinking a seltzer or something, like it
Yeah.
is. There's a different, like, I got to get this out. So I started to feel it a little bit, but it's fascinating how just like starting to talk about it, my body was like, yep, yep.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Guys, if she throws up on this podcast, we're totally leaving it in.
Listen, I've elevated. If I start
No.
vomiting, I'll vomit birds or bees or
Oh
something.
my God, I hope it's like butterflies or something. Oh
Butterflies
my
would be
God,
better.
amazing.
Yes,
So how do you feel like things have changed since then? When was it, like in April or May? May.
May. What is
When, I
today?
mean, I don't know exactly. We have no idea. It was
I
13 years
I think
ago.
it was May. I'm pretty sure it was May. Because well, doesn't matter. I'm now like trying to make sense, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's been fascinating. It's like with every step of this journey, I feel it's like I'm even more in my body and more
Yes.
confident and more grounded, but also more elevated. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Yeah.
weird combination
Yeah.
of being very present, but also hovering above the ground.
Well, understanding like your consciousness, right? Your awareness has been expanded, right?
Yeah.
So you understand, see, and feel more, which includes being more connected to your body.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been very interesting because it's like I continually feel it more and more and more, even before this incident, if you will, this leveling up. It's like, oh, I've never felt more in my body and sure of who I am. Oh, I've never felt more. It's like it keeps going. And that happened in a larger way. It's interesting because that's funny. That's something you say often that I just said. It's interesting because I was like, wow, okay, it became you. I had a challenge. I think the reason why I was like, when was it? Because I had a challenge of um spending some time with people that I've known for a long time. And
Mhm,
something
mhm.
was feeling very off in my body and my mind, and like things were feeling so weird. And it really took a minute, and not that or anything wrong, it's just like, phases in life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Of
yeah, yeah,
old
yeah,
friends and
yeah.
everything, and like something was just off, and it really bothered me for a little bit. And then I was like, no, this makes sense because this is who I am now. This is it just it my words are not coming to me as well as I would love for them to. But I think there was a test of sorts.
Mm,
There
mhm,
was, because I think we had that conversation, and then I had um this girls trip, which was so lovely, but I just internally was having a bit of a struggle because it was like, oh, these are people from my past,
mhm.
so you automatically kind of fall into that.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
then, but
yeah.
my body didn't want to do that. Right. And my body and my
Yes.
mind didn't want to fall into that, and it was just very interesting. So for like the week after that, I was really just kind of tuning into the why and the what and how I was feeling. Um, and I feel like, I don't know why I'm talking about that, but I think that there was like a bit of a test with that.
Well, I think you saw how different you were,
Yes.
right? It was like a
Yes.
few weeks later, you got this huge example of like, well, and it was funny because you were upset about it like you
I
kind
was
of didn't
upset.
understand
Yeah,
why you didn't
exactly.
feel it was one of those things where like that should have been like why did I leave feeling a certain way?
Right.
And we sort of got to the bottom of like, well, this is so you're so different now.
I'm so different. Yeah.
And as we continue to grow and evolve, this is one of the great like tragedies of life, I think, is
Yeah.
you grow away from people that you really love.
Yeah.
And like, it was a very stark contrast of who you are now.
Exactly. Yeah. It was unsettling, but okay. It just took me a minute to kind of process. Um, yeah, I felt the timing is just so interesting. That's the other thing, that after our conversation and after my I'm not gonna say rebirth, but maybe a little bit,
Call
my
it
leveling up.
the rebirth on your healing journey.
Thank you so much. All of the words I love. Um, but I've been and thanks to, of course, you've mentioned, like, go ahead and write down some of these things, these
Yeah.
synchronicities, these
Yeah,
moments of
yeah.
like,
Knowing.
just to kind of knowing and like, so I've just been like paying so much more attention and just seeing like cause and effect and feeling and result, and
Yeah.
like becoming so much more aware of that has been quite fascinating. And one of the things, besides, listen, I fall into the same traps as everybody, right?
Mhm.
Besides my horrible sleep and sugar addiction, um uh, I because love and food and money
Mhm.
are all
Mhm.
very tied together. And I these last couple of years, this year in particular, have been the hardest money lessons. And I've
Yeah.
been struggling with accepting and learning them.
Which
I've
is
been,
so funny just to sit across from you and know how smart and capable and talented and like what your past is around it.
yeah,
So it's almost like you're watching someone as much as the same thing as watching you like refuse to sleep, refuse to eat things
yeah.
that make you feel good. You're like, I'm going to refuse to make money also.
I refuse to make money and I refuse to keep money. So as
Yes.
soon as I get it, I'm going to get rid of it immediately on stupid things, ordering food that's not healthy or good for me. So yeah, so the money thing has been interesting because once we started discussing and like shifting and refocusing, all the words,
Yeah. Yeah. Was that last week that you had that
it
big
was a
breakthrough? 2 weeks
couple
ago? When did the
what
chair thing come about?
last week.
It was last week.
It was last week.
We started talking about it, but you had like an up level again.
I had an up level, and then like this, I received a random text about this job that was like, name your price, essentially. And I really leaned into what that would be. And it was like so exciting and such an exercise in just receiving and accepting and naming a quote and all of
Yes.
that.
Wait, I
Um,
want to, do
yeah,
you feel like you really asked for the right number?
I do. I
Great.
do.
No, yeah. I'm not, this is not me questioning because I don't, yeah, like
Certainly, certainly.
yeah. Then I think then that's an
I
incredible exercise of
do.
what just happened.
Because I reached out to numerous people. I reached out to
Yeah.
artists who do commission work. I
Yeah,
reached
she
out
was
to,
going to get commissioned to create this set piece.
yes.
So very
And
creative.
yeah, reached out to other production designers and whatever. So, and everyone kind of came back around with this, like, start at this number.
Yeah.
And I went about $1,500 over that
Great.
because
Which
I
I
was
think
like,
is
okay.
great.
And
Because
the thing that I was most impressed with, but also just like, no, this makes sense. I was like, I have to have 50% up front. I'm not
yeah.
going to do any work
Yeah.
without that. And
Yep.
while I did do some work in terms of research and all of
Yeah.
the design and whatever, the thing ended up falling through, but honestly for the best, because I have a
Right.
different job that I would have done. I would have let kind
Slide.
of fall, let's slide,
Yeah.
had I done this other. So it ended up being a total blessing with just the lesson itself.
Yeah.
And it also was like, yeah, this things can come through if I'm open. And that was the other thing, going back again, my brain is scattered. But one of the biggest things that we talked about is with my money issues, it's less about restricting and it's more about calling in more.
Right. Or like stepping up to, like you can, you're like kind of doing very little. It's like,
Yeah.
why don't you go into the world and like do what you want to do
But
and
I think
ask
there was
to be
also an
paid?
element of, because anytime you talk about, I'm not good with money, or I struggle with money, or I don't have
Yeah.
that much money, it's
Yeah.
about, okay, well, let's budget.
Right.
Let's restrict. Let's see
Right.
what you have and decide what you can and cannot spend on, which, yes, of course, that makes sense. That's yes. But I understand I am privileged. I was born in upper middle class. Like, I understand, like, I am speaking from a privileged position. I understand that. But as someone who's creating her own destiny, aka everybody, um, when there's the need to budget, or everyone's like, this is what you have to do, I, in defiance, will
Yes.
spend more.
Yes.
And say, fuck you. I'm not going to do that. I understand it. I know math. I understand more needs to come in than that goes out. I understand, like, I've taken so many budget bullshit classes, and what I've used so many tools, all of the things. It's restrict, and then I have a tantrum.
Well,
yeah,
and it's right. No, it's just like being on a restrictive diet.
Yeah.
And again, like that, yes, sure. It's the whole idea, like, don't buy the Starbucks. Make more money. Decide to make more money. There are more ways, you know what I mean? Like, go expand. And immediately I was like, don't budget. Who cares? Like, don't do less, do more. And like, just watching you wrap your head around that. And can I tell you guys, we literally shifted her perspective about this, where all of a sudden, because I was like, listen, like, you've had no problem doing it in the past, just decide to do it. And like, you know what I mean? Just decide to do it, and also do it, and also permission to do it in a way that you like, right? Because there's so much, and this is historical, culturally, like, well, work is hard and sucks, and the only way to get money is to work hard doing something you hate, right? And it's like, or just decide that you can make money doing something you love. And like, I don't know, was it a few hours later that you got that text about
I think it was the next day, but nonetheless. Within a day or two. Yeah.
It was within 24 hours.
It was
that you got. And it was just so interesting, because I think there is something to, you energetically showing up differently and deciding, did you have truth in your body?
I was getting some like weird belchy stomach gurgles.
Okay, so Claire recognizes the truth by burping. I get full body chills, goosebumps all over my body. Which is funny because it's so cute. My I don't know, wizard George. I've seen this really lovely Portuguese guy who's a bit of a medium here through a friend a couple of times. Claire, you saw him once too, right? He kind of blew your mind. But he, like, he'll tell you stuff and he'll get goosebumps too.
Yeah.
He's like, look at my arm. And I'm always like, so what? I'm like, oh, now it happens to me.
Yeah. It's your body reacting.
So it's your body reacting to something. And then, the more, again, like, our nervous system's in our entire body, not just in your head. And you get signals all of the time. Like, your enteric nervous system processes information first. Like, there's so much more out there. Your body is going to react first. And the more in tune and connected, the better care you take of it, the more you're going to get those signals. And then when you start to pay attention, like you've been doing, Claire, right? Where you're like, okay, if I feel this way or I get this thing and then I act this way, I'm going to start taking notes around like what happens and start to see patterns.
The other interesting thing that's happened within the last, I guess it's been just over a month. So I have been doing, I don't know if I mentioned it on this, but I have been directing a sketch team. With UCB, which is quite an honor for me, because I mean, this was a school that I've spent how much money on, but also I was
I went through, although I got a scholarship for being diverse at one point.
Oh, good for you.
Thank you so much. I got a diverse scholarship.
Yes, indeed. I think I was contemplating doing that for just being old, but I didn't.
Well, you could have, I guess you weren't out yet.
I wasn't out yet. Old and queer?
Yeah.
Wow, I could have nailed it, but also like, I don't need to take a spot for someone, I
don't know. It's a bunch of white dudes. I think it's okay.
I know. That's true. But in the old, before times, it was like everything. It was my world. And then it all shut down. Then it's coming back.
We should explain what UCB is.
Oh yeah. Sorry. UCB is the Upright Citizens Brigade, which is a comedy theater, renowned, one of the great theaters. It's on par with Groundlings or Second City, but just like a little
people end up on SNL who come through there, or writers for a lot of comedy shows, and they teach mostly improv, but also they do like sketch shows and
more characters now too.
Characters.
So yeah, so years and years, and the ultimate goal is to be on a house team and to, be in that community. And I was on a house team for 3 years. I had a running show there, which was quite an accomplishment for our little comedy world. And then of course, everything shut down, whatever. Then they're bringing it back, and there was the it was the time for them to have house team auditions. And I was like, I don't think that's for me. I mean, mainly because I don't see myself here
Yes,
in New
right,
York
right,
for
right.
much longer. But also I was like, I just don't see myself on a house team. And so I was like, hey, I'd be interested in directing, just like threw it out there. I've directed small little things or like whatever.
Self-tapes.
Yes. And so then they came back and asked me to do it. So I was insecure and excited about going into it because it is something new. And also because as a director of the sketch team, you're looking at the writing as well as the acting.
Yeah.
And I just don't consider myself as strong of a writer. And so I was like, oh, I'm insecure, whatever. All of that to say, the first month was a little shaky because I was learning, they were getting back into it. We were all figuring each other out. Then we had like a mini show, and it went poorly. Like it went fine, like the actors and everything, that was fine. But like, I was so in my head and so insecure. I was like, oh my gosh, these writers like don't like me. And I was
Yeah, all that crazy stuff.
the
Yeah, that
stupidest
we tell
things. I was
ourselves,
like,
right?
how old am I? Like what's going on? And we really had this moment after that show where it was like they were frustrated with some things, I was frustrated with some things, and we had like I showed up at this meeting after the show and I was like, okay, this is what needs to happen. And I had the confidence. I was like, Claire, you know this, you
Yeah,
absolutely know this.
yeah.
And when I tell you that we had the best fucking show that this theater has ever seen.
Yes.
Like it was the whole month was unbelievable because I stopped being insecure.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm not sure about that. Or I just was open to other ideas. I was just like, I wasn't being too precious. I was just letting things come out of me as they happened. Like I was fully going on my gut.
Yeah.
And I was thinking last night, because our show was on Monday, it was fantastic. And then we had our pitch meeting for the next show last night, and we were just laughing and we were like being so stupid and silly. And it was like the best feeling. And I felt I was somewhat tingly throughout because I was like, all right, like I was leading, but also part of this, and everyone was really encouraging each other. It was like the most beautiful space.
I love.
And that was only an outcome for me just believing in myself and knowing that I know. Knowing that I know.
Yeah.
What's right. And then what I am part of knowing is that you don't know.
Yeah, of course.
Stupid, but like,
no, that's actually the most important thing.
Yes.
I feel like I learned as I get older. It's like, assume you don't know. And how can you be more curious and open? Yeah.
And the fact, and maybe, listen, if someone else knows or has a suggestion that you didn't come up with, that's very good. That's not a slight on you.
Yeah. No. And like, yeah, don't take everything personally, right?
Don't take everything personally.
Or don't take anything personally, honestly. For agreements. Yeah.
So I don't know what I felt really special last night because I was like, wow, what a shift.
Yeah.
Because I think between that second show and this third show was when we had this conversation. Yeah. And it just, I've shown up different. I'm showing up different every day. And it just feels really good. I'm still, listen, the other day, I needed to just like sit in silence. And
well, you're a projector.
I'm a projector.
I mean, looking at your phone is not you have to sleep. Looking at the phone is probably not the best way to do it, but that's a thing.
Yeah.
So do I. Oh my God.
We all
literally, because of that new drops that I was taking for my lymphatic drainage, slept horribly 2 nights ago, and yesterday watched the entire TikTok cult documentary on Netflix.
Oh, I don't think I've seen this.
Oh, it's like 3 episodes about, like, you're like, is it a cult? And then like you get into, you're like, oh, this is a cult.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's
So
fascinating.
many.
So many cults. Well,
Yeah.
it's really funny, not funny, sad and heartbreaking, but interesting to watch. I have a hard time, especially after acting for so long. I really want to watch documentaries. I like watching very authentic reality. I'm more interested in like real human behavior
Yeah.
than like, unless the acting's really good, great. But
Right.
like, there's a lot about acting and writing. And like, after spending so much time like in that world, I just it like it doesn't feel relaxing. It feels stressful, and I feel
Yeah.
annoyed. And I'm like, that's the choice. And then it's like, I'm gonna walk to the window. I'm gonna do the monologue voice. And it's like, oh,
I
we're
know.
gonna do an awkward 2 shot. And I'm like, this is now. I'm just annoyed that you guys are bad at this. And like, why is this on Netflix? And
I
like, I
know.
can't. I like I've become snobby. But
Well, I've
what
become
was
snobby, but I like to watch and try to figure out where the decision was made, who's doing. Like, I'm still
right?
very much in it. I'll
Well, that's
complain
because you
about it.
still also
I'm
love the
still
business,
in.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's actually work, right?
Yeah.
For me, it feels like homework. I don't want for a class I'm not taking anymore.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm like, I don't want to do that.
No. No.
Um, but what I really want, and it was like, it was funny. I was joking around and texting someone. I was like, we joke that the it's obviously not, guys, don't get alarmed, but we joke that the formula and the new thing that I'm building is a cult.
Mhm.
But it's funny because it's a self-love cult and it's a self-empowerment cult. So it'd be the shittiest cult anyone's ever invented because all I'm telling you to do is listen to yourself and not me.
Right. Right.
Like, but anyway, I was
I also feel
texting.
like if you call yourself a cult, are you a cult? You know what I mean? I think it's
You're like,
this.
guys, join my multi-level marketing.
I know exactly. It's like
People
I
like,
don't
that's not
know.
what that is.
Right.
Like, I'm such a narcissist, right?
Right.
Where it's like, you can't.
No,
You must
you
not
can't.
be. But I was joking with someone. I was like, I need to fix everyone from who was hurt by that cult with my cult. Because
Yes.
at the end of the day, these were people who didn't have a lot of resources, love, or support, who didn't know how to listen to themselves.
Yeah.
So at all of it was like super heartbreaking. The people that came out were talking about, like, this one woman, it was super fascinating, was talking about like some of the abuse she endured, that she got sicker, physically sicker and sicker and sicker, and her stomach would have problems, she would throw up because she was so miserable there, and her body was just trying to get her out of the situation, but she was too afraid. And all of these people are like, I felt this, or I started to wonder, but then I just, my body felt weird, or my intuition felt weird, but then I just overrode it. And it was like, oh, all of these people need are like connection to self and empowerment and a little bit of love and support. And like, then this stuff wouldn't happen. People wouldn't be able to like convince people that, to take all their money and do all kinds of crazy things with their body. And it's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. But listen, we have scammers, we have catfish,
Yeah.
we have all of
Right.
this because we're all
Right.
in desperate need of community and love.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been a big few months for everyone here.
It's been a big few months.
Where
And
are
it's
you?
going to be a big few months.
Oh, it never stops. It just gets
Never
to be a
stops.
bigger and bigger few months. And then it's the rest of your life and you're
Ooh.
dead. Whoa, what just happened?
I just had tears are about to happen.
Oh, wow.
I have some big fears coming up.
Okay.
We can talk about it at a different time, but
Well, we have a little time. What's going on?
the clock is ticking faster and faster for my time in New York.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, how am I doing this? How am I doing this?
Okay.
So I'm just starting like, yeah. To confirm my lease, like I have to be out of here the end of August.
Yeah.
And I don't know how. I don't know how I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay. So take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Keep them closed. Put a hand on your belly or your heart, whichever makes more sense to you. What is one thing that you know that you need to do today to move you towards this goal? You can share, you can not share. It is a podcast, so it'll be fun, but we can keep them guessing. Fuck them. Just kidding. We love you. Thanks for being here.
I'm getting stomach gurgles.
Great. What came to mind?
I think my podcast.
Great. Do you want to share what that is?
Yeah, so I have a podcast, Clarify Your Day. And I did a year ago, and I loved it. I wanted to do it before I did my other podcast, No Such Thing as Love. And I've been thinking about it for years. I finally
That's the reason we
started
have a podcast now that you're listening to, actually.
Yeah. I wanted to do it, and then I did 12 episodes. I found a producer. And my biggest thing for it's like I need an accountability person who will just, have some insights, whatever, but I'm not necessarily looking for technical. It doesn't matter. So I did. I was like, nah, I'm done with that sentence. So I did the 12 episodes, and then it just like I got stuck, and I think I just had to live the life that I obviously lived last year.
Yeah.
And so I've been desperate to get back to it. And so I have connected with someone who she's like, she has no interest in doing podcasts or producing, but she was like, I just want to work with you. So whatever I can do, like, let's do this. And so I have a new format. It's not that different, but like we've worked on it. And so right now I just need to schedule with some people.
Right.
Like I'm ready to do it. But of course I have I'm in the midst of a production design job. And so I'm like, ugh, but I'm dragging my feet because I hate having to do some of the stuff I have to do for that. But then I'm not doing the things that I want. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I should be working on that versus doing podcast stuff.
Well,
but
I mean, it could take like a couple emails just to schedule your first one.
A text. It's not a problem.
Okay, so you're going to do it today.
So I'm going to do that today.
And then you're going to send me a text confirming that you did it today.
Correct. Thank you so
much. All right, we're all keeping her accountable, folks.
Yeah. Because that's at least something. And I'm also starting this, I don't know. I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm just getting overwhelmed.
No. All you have to do is send one text today.
Okay.
And there's only one right move at a time.
Mm-hmm.
She's crying.
I'm
Guys,
crying.
It's beautiful. She's feeling her feelings. It's incredible. She's connected to herself. It's scary. This is ending. And what's coming up for you?
How? I'm getting in my head.
Yeah, don't do it. Right?
I'm getting in my head, but then I'm also like, but at what point do I not get in my head with like logistics of it? You know what I mean? It's like,
what about, well, I could say, let's give you another few weeks if you haven't had, and then we just make some other plans, right? Give yourself another couple of weeks to lean into this more.
Okay.
Because look what happened last week.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we can plan all the things in the world and life works out differently. Right.
Well, I know that. Yeah.
So, and when we make fear-based decisions, they tend to blow up in our face, right? Or take us further away from what we actually want.
Yeah.
So even right now, right, you're getting a little bit emotionally activated. You can make a decision from here anyway, right? You're emotional. No. So the first thing that came to mind, do, and then you could also do other things that feel more connected to it, but you can't make any decisions from this place because it will be out of fear and it will be like a panic decision, right?
Yeah.
And of course, yes, you use your brain and you panic if you're in an emergency and you have to call 911 or you're in a fire, but not with like life decisions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. And this may seem, I don't know, this way of being or working may seem not very rational or logical, but I tend to see it work everywhere. And and I'm kind of just saying this for everyone, right? Like, of course, our rational mind's important, but the more you can tune into what's really right for you, the more you end up in the right place at the right time. Like you end it up more in alignment, opportunities show up, things just show up. And we're not just banking on that, right? You're going to have to make some decisions and do some things. You're not just going to like meditate
show up still.
your stuff into moving boxes.
No.
But again, you got to be spending every day checking in and being like, what's the one thing that's going to move us forward? What's the one thing? What's the one thing? And literally in the morning and in a really authentic, connected way. Have you been doing that?
This past week, I feel like I got off track.
Yeah.
A little
great.
bit.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's all do it, guys. Whatever the goal is, right? Whatever the scary thing is that you're avoiding and not doing or not looking at, just in the morning, I think is the best time, right? Before you look at your phone, take a deep breath, whether you meditate, whether you do a mindfulness practice, it doesn't matter. But just like before you engage with other people in the outside world, ask what's the one thing, or, what do I need less of? What do I need more of is a really good thing. But like, what's the one thing that's going to, maybe you don't even have a goal that will bring you clarity or that brings you closer to your goal. It doesn't matter. Really listen to what comes up and do it, even if it seems like, again, how is this going to lead to Claire moving? I don't know, but it's just the thing that's going to put you in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
If it's really coming from an authentic place.
Yeah.
It's scary. You're doing a really scary thing. This is why you're scared. How long have you been in that apartment?
12 years.
Yes. How long have you been in New York? The whole time?
14.
Right? Uprooting your whole life is scary.
It's fucking scary.
Also, the closest family member that you have and love
doesn't support
this. So this is really scary. Of course you feel emotional right now. It's okay, honey. Of course. But this is you taking a stand for your life and for what you want for the first time in a number of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to be incredible.
It is. It is. I think my fear has to do with it not happening versus it happening.
I think it's at the point where it's going to happen. Like, I don't think it's an option anymore.
I don't think so either, but I truly, then the reality of it is, but truly how, but I know I can't necessarily answer that right now, but I also, that's when I get overwhelmed. And again, it's less about my tears and my fear are less about leaving New York.
Yeah.
And more about staying in New
York. Well, let that be a motivator to every day.
Yeah.
Take a moment to what's the one thing I can do and just start to move forward in that direction. Right. Yeah. And, talk to your dad about it.
Ugh.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. There's some scary, some uncomfortable things you're gonna have to do.
Yeah.
And like going into the unknown, no matter what, is scary.
Yeah.
But I know you can do it. You've done incredible things. This is just the next one.
Yeah.
And you're emotional because it's so important.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, what's cool is people are going to get a live action play-by-play. Maybe Claire might be crying a lot over the next couple months, guys.
Oh, I will be.
We love that because she's connected. She's connected to herself.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for being so honest and vulnerable.
Of course. I feel like I wasn't able to articulate well, but that's been a lot recently just because I feel like I feel like I'm jumping between gut and head.
Yeah.
Just I can't, so it's hard to verbalize what's happening.
Yes. Well, and when you shift from, and this, like, I think you're seeing this in a lot of different spaces, when you go from just living from the neck up and rational braining everything to a more embodied way of living, and then beyond that, really learning to honor and trust your intuition, your creativity, your body's unique, signals and patterns and, messages. It's really strange to talk about
Yeah.
It's really strange to admit you live that way. And it's
Yeah.
really strange to sometimes give language to the fact that you're like, when things feel really true to me, I want to burp and gag.
Right.
Right? You know what I mean? You're like, people are
Yeah.
like, she has some problems. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
like, you know what I mean? Like, people, it just doesn't. None of it makes sense when when you
Doesn't make
go into
sense.
the space of the body and listening and intuition and creativity. It's not rational, but life isn't. And why do we pretend it is?
Why do we pretend? I also feel like it's a language I haven't learned yet.
Yeah. Well, because everyone has a different unique language with their,
Yeah.
being and their body and their, like I have this one friend and she always laughs. She's like, Lianna, you talk about your body like it's this like other person. And I was like, well, it's this thing that I have that just tells me what to do. And
Yeah.
I know when I spent a bunch of years not doing what it told me, I was very sick and
Very
bleeding and
sick.
in bed and upset and hair falling out and allergic to everything. So I know more than anything that this is the thing that I listen to. But
Uh-huh.
it took me a number of years to like, I'm still learning to trust myself and trust it more because again, society really puts a lot of value, especially like where and how I grew up on education and the
Of
brain and
course.
higher
Yep.
learning and rational thinking and science. But all of your wisdom is inside. And you have literally I've watched you actively shut off those signals and do everything you can not to hear them because it's making you do scary things. But
Yep.
I know from my life and everyone else around me that I work with who stays with me, on the other side of that fear is the more beautiful life. And it's cool because, oh, she's burping again, guys. She knows I'm
I'm
right. She
burping.
knows
God,
I'm
it's
right.
crazy.
Yeah. On
Yeah.
the other side of the fear is that bigger, beautiful life. And on the other side of the next fear and the next mountain. And it's so funny because I realize now I just do things scared. I don't care how much I don't want to do them. If my body is telling me to do it or not do it, I have to,
Yeah.
because otherwise I just can't. I just can't anymore. I can't go
Yeah.
against that. Right. And it's starting to happen for you and it's really terrifying.
Yeah.
And your brain starts going crazy because it's like, your ego wants to control it.
Right.
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 A fear-based way of looking at the world wants to control it. And your body's always going to move. Martha Beck says this, and I really love it. Your body, that's why like the decision making, right? I'm sure I've talked about it on the podcast where it's like, is there a sweetness in my heart? Do I have desire for it? So when you ask yourself a question, it's like, is there a pull in my heart? Does it bring me peace in my gut? And I always talk about like, if you think about making the decision or not making the decision, does it make you feel like peace in or like relaxed in your gut or tight? And then the final question is, does it bring freedom to my soul? And for me, I translate that with my clients to, does it make you feel more free or more constricted? But she always talks about like your body, your soul, like whatever we're going to call it, will always lead you towards love, happiness, love, peace, and freedom, right?
Yeah.
And your brain is terrified of expansion. Anything new is scary. Anything new feels like death. So
Yeah.
here you are, your brain is just going to keep getting louder. And you just have to learn to be like, girl, it's okay. My
Yeah.
body's got me. It knows. And this is why it's so important for you to keep tracking what you intuitively or feel like you need to
Yeah.
do when you do it, what happens, because that's how you build your trust muscle.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what you're in the process of. It's scary. You're learning a new way of like
I'm learning
walking
new. Yeah.
while making the biggest transition of your adult life.
You know what it feels like? It feels like I have moved to a foreign country and I know a couple words of their language,
Yeah.
but I don't, it's like I love it. Like it feels right, but I can't quite communicate and I can't quite do everything as I know I will be able to do.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I'm like,
Yes.
it's starting on this journey and I'm like trying to communicate, but I'm using language from a different place. I'm using, and like
Yeah.
the way to do laundry or do this is from a different place.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm learning what the new way of
Yes.
living is, but
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
caught between these two worlds right now.
Yes. Yes. You're literally talking about me speaking Portuguese.
Correct. Correct. But I'm like figuratively.
Yeah. Yeah. And same. I mean, I still continue to learn to surrender more and more and more. And I realize that like what we're talking about right now is the thing I'm now supposed to be teaching people.
Yeah.
And
I can attest to that.
Yeah,
You need
yeah,
to
yeah,
be.
yeah, 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 yeah. And it's something I'm really still learning for myself.
Yeah.
But this is where everything comes from, right?
Yeah.
And we're moving to a place where, we're not going to need our brains in the same way anymore because of AI. So,
Oh,
like,
Jesus.
yeah, how do
Right.
we, what is the other part, right? What's the other component? And it was so funny as we were talking about this, because I feel like the last part of this I'm really learning and makes me happy because, like, at my core, Rainbow Hearts are unicorn. All we're really doing with everything is like, how do I bring more magic and creativity into this work?
Yeah.
That's what this is, right? We're bringing more magic into all. Oh, wow, she's burping again. She like that.
I'm burping a lot. Woo! It's so
Oh my
crazy.
God. It's so exciting to watch you step into this new way of being. And even like you cry more easily, which I think is actually a really healthy, beautiful
Oh,
thing.
it's huge. For years,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
not cry. Like I
Yeah,
never
yeah, yeah.
cried.
Yeah, yeah. No, you cry more easily, you're more connected to
Mhm.
yourself. Like all of this is like an awakening into a whole new skill set and a
Yeah.
whole new way of being in your life. And it's incredible.
I didn't cry at my mom's funeral.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about your sisters?
No, I didn't, but that was less sad. I was more
Yeah.
angry and
Yeah.
worried
Yeah.
for my dad.
Yeah. 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 Oh, well,
Anywho, just as confirming,
yeah. Yeah.
boy, oh
Yeah.
boy, the
Yeah.
valve was shut.
Yeah.
The
Well,
emotions were
no,
shut.
I mean, I think it's really healthy watching you. Like, you're so much more
Absolutely.
connected to that than you used to be.
Yeah.
And even within the last like 6, 8 months, you start crying and it would take you a minute to understand why you were crying or
Yeah.
where it
Now
was
I
coming
know
from.
almost
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful work. Thank you for
Beautiful
being,
work.
thank you for being a guinea pig. Or like
Girl,
what?
thank
Actually,
you.
I'm the biggest guinea pig,
Thank
probably.
you for your patience
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
understanding and support.
Of course, of course. Well, I hope that there was something exciting and meaningful and useful for everyone out there listening today. We're going to bring some more authenticity and more magic and creativity and playfulness into the healing journey because, like everyone's been telling me, I'm like my grandmother, and that was like she just brought so much laughter and joy. And I think that leading with joy and love is the best way to stay healthy and
Absolutely.
to grow. So this is
Yeah.
what we're offering more of here. And if you don't like it, then you are welcome to do something else with your time.
Absolutely.
I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Claire, for always being really vulnerable and open and an inspiration to so many. As I hear whenever you really get vulnerable, people really, really love it. Because I think there's just not enough of that out in the world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for being a space for that. I love you. I'm proud of you.
I love you. Thank you.
All right. Next time, guys.